High fidelity, or hi-fi, refers to audio equipment that reproduces sound with minimal distortion and noise, aiming to sound as true to the original source as possible. The concept took off in the 1950s, when the introduction of electrical recording and better amplifiers led to a boom in home audio. In this era, vinyl record players and vacuum tube amplifiers became common household items, and the very term hi-fi was popularized as enthusiasts sought ever higher sound quality. By the late 1950s, stereo recording emerged, adding a new dimension of realism by splitting audio into left and right channels. This golden age of analog hi-fi peaked in the 1960s and 1970s, with innovations like improved turntables, hi-fi receivers, and preamplifiers and power amplifiers for greater control over sound. Hi-fi systems during this period delivered a warm, rich sound through vinyl LPs and tape reels, and music listening at home became a passionate hobby for many. Despite the charms of analog audio, it had drawbacks. Vinyl records and magnetic tapes suffered from background noise, hiss, crackle, and physical wear over time, and copying them led to quality loss. The quest in the 1970s was to push analog formats to their limits: better turntable tone arms, noise reduction systems for tape, like Dolby noise reduction, and high-end speakers, all to approach the ideal of live sound at home. By the end of the 1970s, hi-fi enthusiasts had incredibly refined analog setups. However, a new technological breakthrough was on the horizon that would upend the audio world: the advent of digital audio. The stage was set for a revolution in fidelity and convenience as audio moved from the continuous waveforms of analog into the binary realm of digital data. The 1980s ushered in a seismic shift in audio with the introduction of digital technology into consumer hi-fi. The landmark was the launch of the compact disc, CD, in 1982, a collaboration between Philips and Sony that brought digital audio to the masses. Unlike analog records or tapes, CD encode music as digital data, 16-bit samples at 44.1 kHz, allowing for ultra-quiet backgrounds and wide dynamic range. For listeners, the CD delivered a new standard of clarity and convenience: no surface crackle, no tape hiss, and the ability to skip tracks or random access music instantly. Early marketing touted the CD's perfect sound and durability, no needle wear or stretch tape, making it a compelling alternative to vinyl. Digital audio dramatically reduced noise and distortion, so that even subtle details in recordings became easier to hear. Consumers rapidly adopted the format. By the late 80s, vinyl and cassette sales were declining as CD became the dominant music medium. This first generation of digital hi-fi wasn't without skeptics, however. Some audiophiles felt early discs sounded harsh or too clinical, lacking the warmth of analog records. In fact, early CD and players had some technical limitations, like digital filters and converters that improved over time. Nevertheless, the convenience and consistency of digital won over the marketplace. Manufacturers raced to produce CD players, digital amplifiers, and new digital formats. Key digital audio formats of this era included not only discs. The industry also gave birth to formats such as DAT and minidisc. Digital audio tape, DAT, of the late 1980s was a digital cassette tape format for high-fidelity recording and playback. It could equal CD quality and was embraced in some professional circles for making master recordings. However, DAT remained relatively niche for consumers, partly due to cost and record industry resistance. The music industry feared home digital tape copying. Minidisc, launched in the 1990s by Sony, the minidisc was a small rewritable digital disc. Minidiscs used a data-compressed format, ATRAC, to achieve near-CD quality sound in a portable medium. They gained popularity in some regions for portable listening and recording, but never fully overtook the CD. If we talk about the very essence of digital audio, regardless of formats, then the essence is this. Digital audio relies on converting sound into numerical samples, a process governed by the Nyquist-Shannon theorem, and then reconstructing it in analog form for our ears. One huge advantage of this digital approach is that copies of digital audio can be duplicated endlessly without any generation loss in quality. This was a game changer, unlike copying a tape, which adds noise and degrades sound each time. Making a clone of a CD or a digital file preserves the exact quality of the original. By the late 1980s, the digital revolution in hi-fi was in full swing, with CD widely adopted and digital signal processing starting to appear in audio gear. Manufacturers also began integrating digital-to-analog converters and digital signal processors into home audio components, foreshadowing the next waves of innovation. In the 1990s, digital technology continued to reshape how we listen to and collect music. Perhaps the most influential development was the emergence of compressed digital audio formats, most famously MP3. The MP3 format, developed in the mid-90s, enabled audio files to be reduced to a fraction of their original size through psychoacoustic compression, albeit with some loss of fidelity. This compression made it feasible to store hundreds of songs on a computer or CD-ROM, and later, thousands of songs on portable devices. The MP3 revolutionized portable music storage and sharing. Suddenly music could be easily traded over the early internet and carried on flash memory-based players. By the late 1990s, services like Napster allowed users to share MP3s online, disrupting the music industry and familiarizing an entire generation with the idea of digital music files rather than physical albums. Convenience often trumped audio quality in this era. Many listeners were almost happy with the sound of MP3s in exchange for portability and free access. At the same time, personal computers and software became part of the hi-fi ecosystem. Home users began ripping discs to files and creating playlists on their computers. In 1999, the introduction of the portable MP3 player meant that digital music truly went mobile. The consumer music experience was changing rapidly. Instead of a shelf of compact discs or vinyl, your music collection could live on a tiny hard drive. By the early 2000s, the transition from analog to digital was largely complete. Cassette tapes and vinyl records were now niche products, while CD and digital files reigned. Even car stereos and Discman players gave way to MP3 CD and cable MP3 player connections. Despite the popularity of compressed audio, audiophiles and industry technologists did pursue higher fidelity digital formats during the late 90s and 2000s. DVD audio and Super Audio CD were two high-resolution disc formats introduced around 1999 to 2000, offering increased bit depth and sample rates for potentially better than CD sound. These formats aimed to satisfy demanding listeners by providing even greater sound quality than standard CD, and sometimes multi-channel surround mixes. However, these new premium formats arrived just as consumers were shifting to file-based and streaming music, and the improvements they offered weren't always obvious without high-end equipment. The 2000s also witnessed the birth of music streaming services, which would become the dominant mode of music consumption in the following decade. Early services like Pandora and Spotify demonstrated the appeal of accessing a vast online library of music without owning physical media. Initially, streaming audio was typically delivered in compressed formats. But as internet speeds improved and demand grew, these services started increasing their quality. By the mid-2010s, several platforms offered hi-fi streaming tiers. For example, Tidal launched in 2014 with a focus on lossless CD quality streaming, and others followed. Eventually, even mass-market services like Apple Music and Amazon Music added lossless and high-resolution audio options at no extra charge. High-fidelity sound no longer requires a large physical media collection or esoteric gear. Anyone with a decent internet connection and a good converter or network speaker can stream studio-quality sound on demand. Digital technology has effectively democratized hi-fi. What once required an expensive turntable and pristine LPs can now be achieved with a subscription and a smartphone feeding a clean digital signal to an affordable digital converter and amplifier. It wasn't only consumer equipment that went digital. the music production process itself underwent a revolution from the late 1970s through the 1990s. This behind-the-scenes transformation in recording studios is a key part of how digital technology changed hi-fi sound for listeners. The first experiments in digital recording date back to the 1960s and early 70s, but the breakthrough came in 1977 when Dr. Thomas Stockham's Soundstream system made one of the first commercial 16-bit digital recordings. By the early 1980s, major studios and electronics companies were racing to adopt digital audio. In 1982, the same year the CD debuted, Sony introduced the PCM1610, a converter allowing digital stereo audio to be stored on U-Matic videotapes, which became a standard for creating CD masters. Within a few years, digital recording moved from experimental to mainstream. By 1987, the first digital mixing consoles had appeared, and digital audio tape (DAT) recorders were being used in studios in Japan and elsewhere. DAT, mentioned earlier as a consumer format, actually found greater use among professionals for making digital master tapes of mixes, replacing analog reel-to-reel for final masters. The late 1980s and early 90s saw the rise of the digital audio workstation (DAW), software running on personal computers that could record, edit, and mix music entirely in the digital domain. In 1989, DigiDesign, later part of Avid, introduced Sound Tools, a two-track digital editing software for the Macintosh and PC that evolved into Pro Tools by 1991. For the first time, music could be edited on a screen with point-and-click precision, and effects like reverb or EQ could be applied via digital signal processing rather than outboard analog gear. This was transformative. Producers gained the ability to perform non-linear editing, cutting and rearranging sections easily, to automate mixes, and to recall sessions exactly. By the mid-1990s, many studios had adopted hybrid setups, using digital tape machines or DAWs alongside analog gear, and fully digital production became common. This professional shift meant that even if a listener in 1995 played a vinyl LP, music might have been recorded on a digital system or mixed with digital effects. It all also lowered the cost of high-quality recording, eventually leading to more music being produced in smaller project studios with computers. All these changes in the pro world ensured that by the 2000s, virtually all commercial music releases had a pristine digital lineage, taking advantage of the full frequency range and dynamic range that modern hi-fi equipment can reproduce. Interestingly, the march of digital audio did not spell the absolute end of analog formats. In the 2010s, vinyl records, which had been relegated to a tiny niche after the CD takeover, began making a remarkable comeback. Enthusiasts, young and old, rediscovered the tangible, tactile experience of vinyl. Sales of LPs grew steadily year over year, and new pressing plants opened to meet demand. Many music lovers cite the warmth and depth of analog sound as a key reason for vinyl's resurgence, arguing that vinyl playback can capture a certain rich character that some find lacking in digital formats. There's also a strong element of nostalgia and ritual. Playing a record involves a deliberate act, dropping the needle, viewing large album artwork, reading liner notes, which turns listening into an event rather than a background activity. Beyond subjective sound qualities, this vinyl revival has been fueled by community and culture. Vinyl records offer a sense of connection to music history and create opportunities for social interaction. Think record store browsing or swapping vinyl finds with friends. Even artists have contributed to the trend, often releasing special editions on vinyl, sometimes with all-analog mastering, to cater to audiophile fans. From a technological perspective, the vinyl comeback coexists with digital advancements. It's not a rejection of digital so much as a complementary niche. In fact, many modern vinyl records are cut from high-resolution digital masters, since recording studios are largely digital, blending the two worlds. We also see analog-inspired technologies like tube amplifiers, turntables, and even cassette tapes enjoying a boutique renaissance. You can now buy everything from retro-style turntables to brand new tube amps and high-end cassette decks, often with modern twists. This ongoing interest in analog audio, even in 2025, underscores that high fidelity is not solely about specs and numbers, it's also about how audio feels to the listener. If you compare a hi-fi setup from the 1970s to one in 2025, the influence of digital technology is everywhere. Modern hi-fi systems often center around digital sources and processing. Music streaming has become the default. Rather than loading a CD, users are likely to cue music from a streaming app on their smartphone. Services such as Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, and Qobuz offer instant access to enormous music libraries, with options for lossless and high-resolution audio streaming now widely available. Networked audio players and DACs are common components in hi-fi racks, bridging the gap between internet-based content and analog speakers. The result is that high-fidelity listening is more accessible and user-friendly. You can have thousands of albums at your fingertips without handling physical media and still enjoy high sound quality. Another significant change in today's hi-fi is the use of digital signal processing, DSP, to optimize audio in ways not possible in the past. DSP involves using specialized computer chips to adjust and improve the audio signal in real time. Initially developed in the 1980s for studio gear, like digital reverbs and equalizers, DSP is now common in consumer audio as well. Many active speakers and modern subwoofers include DSP to manage crossovers and frequency response. This allows manufacturers to achieve a flatter, more accurate sound from compact enclosures by electronically correcting for speaker and enclosure imperfections. For example, a small desktop speaker can produce surprisingly deep bass because DSP algorithms dynamically boost low frequencies and prevent distortion by limiting driver excursion as needed. Room correction systems are another boon of the digital era. Using a microphone and test tones, a receiver or dedicated DSP box can auto-EQ your speakers to counteract the acoustic quirks of your room, reducing boomy resonances and taming harsh reflections, something impractical to this degree with pure analog gear. Amplification technology in hi-fi has also evolved thanks to digital innovation. Classic hi-fi amplifiers were Class A or AB analog designs, prized for sound quality but often large, hot, and inefficient. Today, Class D amplifiers, sometimes called digital amplifiers, have matured to the point where even discerning listeners accept them in high-end systems. Class D amps use high-frequency switching output stages to achieve very high power efficiency, meaning they can be compact yet deliver strong output without requiring massive heat sinks. Early Class D designs in the 1990s had mediocre fidelity, but modern implementations are excellent, operating at switching speeds so fast that the output, when filtered, is indistinguishable from a smooth analog signal. The result is lighter, cooler-running amps, often combined with switched-mode power supplies, that can easily provide hundreds of watts. For example, it's now possible to have a 100-watt per channel amplifier smaller than a paperback book, something unimaginable in the 1970s. The story of hi-fi's evolution is not a simple linear progression of analog being beaten by digital. Instead, it's a rich narrative of how new technologies expand the possibilities for enjoying music. Analog and digital now coexist, each appreciated for its own merits. We can expect the future of hi-fi to continue this trajectory of innovation. Emerging technologies like immersive spatial audio formats, high-resolution streaming, and even applications of artificial intelligence for personalized sound profiles or upmixing stereo into surround are on the horizon. In summary, digital technology has dramatically changed hi-fi in format, in equipment, and in experience. For those who still love the analog rituals, the new digital landscape hasn't taken them away but rather complemented them with more choices. As we look ahead, one thing is clear: whether delivered via diamond stylus on vinyl or a high bitrate digital stream, music has never been more accessible in high fidelity than it is today. Enjoying great sound is now a wonderfully flexible blend of old and new, truly the best of both worlds for audio fans.